I never imagined our peaceful village would become a place of fear. But there I stood, watching Inkem and Zuri, once the best of friends, now turned into enemies. Zuri had become something else, a shadow of the boy I knew, filled with anger and dark magic. As the sky darkened and the air grew cold, I could feel it. Tonight, something terrible was about to happen. I remember when Inkem and Zuri were just two young boys, always laughing and running through the village. They did everything together. It was rare to see one without the other. Inkem was the son of our elder, destined for leadership, and everyone respected him. Zuri, on the other hand, was quieter, but he had a big heart. He always helped those in need, and we all loved him for it. I would often watch them from the riverbank, where the children played. They would talk about the future, dreaming of ways to make Eziyama a better place. Back then, the world seemed so simple. The sky was always blue, and the village was alive with joy. But then, things started to change. It started with Lola. She was the most beautiful girl in Eziyama. Everyone admired her, but Inkem and Zuri both seemed to care for her in ways I didn't understand at first. One day, I heard the news. Inkem had asked Lola to marry him. The village celebrated, but I noticed Zuri standing at the edge of the crowd, his face tight with pain. Later, I overheard the two of them arguing. "You knew I loved her," Zuri had shouted, his voice raw with hurt. Inkem tried to explain, but Zuri wasn't listening. It was like watching a thread unravel, and with it, the bond between them snapped. After that, Zuri was never the same. He stopped coming to the gatherings, and we didn't see him around the village much. I heard whispers that he had gone into the Forbidden Forest, the place our elders warned us never to enter. But Zuri was broken, and sometimes broken people do things we don't understand. Around the same time, the oracle called us all to the village square. Her words were always cryptic, but on that night, they were terrifying. "A great betrayal has come to Eziyama," she said, her voice echoing in the still air. "And soon, the darkness will rise. Be warned, what was once friendship will become your greatest fear." I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I felt a chill creep down my spine. The village began to feel different after that night. The air was heavier, the laughter faded, and a strange sense of dread settled over us. It wasn't long before strange things started happening. The crops that once thrived withered overnight. The livestock, once strong and healthy, began to fall sick. We didn't know why, but the elders whispered that the spirits were angry. Then came the night Zuri returned. But he wasn't Zuri anymore. He called himself Akenga, and the boy we once knew was gone. Cloaked in shadows, he stood at the edge of the village, his eyes filled with anger and something darker, revenge. I'll never forget the way the village fell silent when they saw him. His presence sent shivers through us all. We had heard of dark spirits, but to see one of our own friends become something so fearsome, it was like a nightmare we couldn't wake from. Inkem knew he had to face him. As our leader, it was his responsibility to protect the village. But I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew this wasn't just about protecting Eziyama. It was about facing the friend he had betrayed. The night of the final confrontation was unlike anything I had ever seen. The village square was empty except for Inkem and Akenga. The sky was dark, and the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the whispers of the spirits. Inkem stood tall, but I could see the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. "Zuri," he called out, his voice shaking. "This isn't you. We were friends." Akenga laughed, but it wasn't Zuri's laugh. It was cold and empty. "You took everything from me," he spat. "Now, you will suffer as I have." Their fight was fierce. Akenga's powers were terrifying. The ground shook beneath us, and the air crackled with dark energy. Inkem fought with all his strength, but it seemed hopeless. Every time he tried to reach Zuri, the darkness pushed him back. But then, something unexpected happened. Lola stepped forward from the crowd, her voice trembling. "Zuri," she said, "please stop this. I still care about you. You don't have to be this way." For a moment, Akenga paused. I could see the boy we once knew flicker in his eyes, the Zuri who had been kind and gentle. But the spirits weren't done with him. Don't listen to her, they hissed. They betrayed you. Inkem, bruised and beaten, saw his chance. Zuri, you can break free, he said, his voice filled with desperation. This darkness doesn't control you. We still care about you. I held my breath, watching as Zuri, no, Akenga, wavered. He looked at Inkem, then at Lola. The spirits screamed, trying to pull him back into the shadows, but I could see him fighting. I don't want this, he whispered, his voice filled with pain. With a final cry, Zuri tore himself away from the spirits. The darkness that had wrapped itself around him began to lift, and the shadows that had clouded his heart melted away. He collapsed to the ground, the power that had consumed him finally gone. The village breathed a sigh of relief as Zuri, just Zuri, no longer Akenga, was helped to his feet. Inkem rushed to his side, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. I never meant to hurt you. Zuri nodded, his body weak but his mind clear. I know, he said softly. I lost my way, but I'm back now. Lola joined them, her face filled with emotion. We will heal, together, she promised. Answer, as the armor began to rebuild. The shadows that had loomed over us were gone, and the village was filled with light once more. The bond between Inkem, Zuri, and Lola was stronger than ever, and the oracle's prophecy, though dark, had brought us closer together. I'll never forget what happened, but in the end, it wasn't just about revenge or betrayal. It was about forgiveness, and how even in the darkest of times, love can bring us back into the light.